One thing that was meant to break you had the power to help someone else to survive. Welcome to Healing Through Chaos, the podcast where pain is transformed into purpose through powerful storytelling. It's the one place you'll find licensed professionals and survivors meet at the same table to talk lived experience and expertise. I'm your host, Jonte, and this is where your healing journey begins. On today's episode, we talk mental health advocacy, education, and bipolar disorder with author, keynote speaker, and lifelong educator, Gabriela D. Ayala. Welcome, Gabriela.
Thank you so much, Shante.
Thank you so much for being here. Are you ready to get in today's conversation?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Perfect. So, before your professional work began, what were some of the early life experiences that shaped the way you think about, say, education, purpose, and success?
I grew up low income and first generation and minority. So for me, the American dream for my parents was like, you got to get a good education, keep going to school. We don't know how to get there. We don't know how to get you there, but get through it, get your degrees. And so that was always instilled in me. Not that it was easy, not that I was a great student at all, because with first generation issues and minority and low income, there's a lot of things that come to the surface, working full time while you're going to school, trying to help your family out, all those things that kind of go into the mix. So I wasn't a very good student in the beginning, but I would say that once, after a lot of, I guess, exploring and figuring out who I was, I then identified what I wanted to do. And then I did become that incredible student. So for me, it's just kind of like the first generation experience, the imposter syndrome, and all those things that we kind of have to go through as first generation students.
I'm not a first generation student. Both of my parents, they did put that same pressure on me as being a woman and a minority in this country that I had to go to school and get a degree. And I too identified with that growing up and not necessarily making those good grades and grading school. But once college came along, it was like I had to really get serious about things.
Right.
Now, speaking of college, you've spent most of your career in education and college counseling.
Yes.
What initially drew you to working with students and families during such an important stage in their lives?
I came out of college fresh as a literature major, and I just thought, I'm going to go teach and make everybody love literature. And so I got my first job at a segregated high school, which was like 99% African American and the other percent was Hispanic. And so it was a very eye opening kind of experience for me. And I went in there with the intention of getting them to love literature. And I left with the intention of getting them to college, right? Because I was with juniors and seniors and I started in December, which is a really interesting time to start right before the holidays. And they hadn't had a teacher since, not like at all until that point. And so I came in and I was like, oh, let's learn literature. And they were just like, but we want to talk about college. And I was like, oh, well, we should be at December already kind of applied. And though they hadn't applied and they didn't know what they were doing. And so I thought, wow, this is a spot where I can kind of give my services and help them figure out what they want to do for the future. So I spent nights, weekends, holidays, everything kind of like helping them with their essays, helping them do a roadmap to where they want to be. And so that's where my passion really started for getting my master's in education, eventually a couple of doctorates that I attempted. And that's just kind of been my road. So
Thank you for sharing with our audience. It takes me back to when I was in my senior year and my school counselor was going around trying to help people find colleges and things like that. And I was a person that wasn't interested because I did not know whether or not if I wanted to go to college. So thank
right.
you for actually leaving college and wanting to go back and help others find the way because you don't necessarily think that coming right out of your bachelor's degree.
Right. You don't think that way. And also, I never had that experience with a counselor. I never had someone that cared enough to really try to get me through it. So I just decided right away that I was going to be that person for a lot of students. And I have been for over 20 years. So,
And we thank you so much for your work. Speaking of your work, you work, of course, with young people who feel pressure to succeed, like myself back in the day. What
yeah.
are some of the biggest misconceptions you see about success and achievement when it comes to these students?
Sure. I think everybody has this vision of I'm supposed to know what I want to do in ninth grade. I'm supposed to build the right classes and the right experiences while I'm in high school because I'm going to go to a 4-year college after I get out of high school. And for me, it's like not everybody's road is that linear. or thought out. I think that pinning down, some people are lucky enough to know that they want what they want to do in ninth grade. Some people are just not. Not that they're not lucky, they're just not ready to make that kind of decision. And so for me, it's like the misconception is you don't have to really know exactly what you do want to do in ninth grade, right? All I want you to do is really like understand that there's so many different paths to get to where you want to get, that not all of them look the same. And so just because yours doesn't look the same doesn't mean it's not going to be effective or it's going to get you where you want to be.
Absolutely. Can you share a moment with our audience where a student really changed your perspective on success and achievement?
Yeah. Gosh, I want to say that I can't even really pick one student because I've been through many spectrums of students, from like first generation students to international students trying to come to America for university, to extremely well established, high achieving students trying to get into Ivy League. And so for me, my heart lies with each kid. Each of them have this different story, this different drive that gets them to where they want to get. And so for me, it's really just about getting to know that student, finding their passion, and just getting them to that end goal that they never thought was possible is really the highlight of every single session that I have with my students.
Oh, I love that. And how did your own life experiences challenge the definition of success or what you used to believe in?
See, when I spoke about the students just now, about like how nothing is linear and everything kind of like depends on how you get there, like the road that you take. But even then, like you never know exactly how it's going to go. For me, I was extremely non traditional. I was a horrible high school student. I spent 4 years in a community college trying to figure out my life while I was working full time. And I was failing classes. I didn't know what I was interested in. Finally, I had a very big depressive episode, which I was an undiagnosed bipolar at that time. And I had a huge depressive episode. I had done some horrible, like I was facing jail time. Like it was bad. And so I had this recoil with my depressive episode. And through that, I saw my bookshelf and I saw that there was all these books my mom would collect that nobody was reading. And so I started reading literature and I was obsessed with it. And I saw it as every book was an accomplishment that I was able to complete, right? Like I was known for not completing anything, but books, every time I read one and finished one, that was an accomplishment. And so I just kind of started racking it up. By the time I was done with my depressive episode, I had read over 100 books and I had finished my associate's somehow, some way, right? Like I got the letter that I had finished my associate's degree, and then that was it. That was like, I'm gonna be a literature major. I'm gonna go to college and do that. So that's kind of the weird thing about success. It's just like you never know how it's gonna go, but eventually you're gonna get to where you need to go.
Absolutely. And you were undiagnosed. You knew you were going through something, but you kept pushing through. And
Yeah,
it eventually pushed you into actually speaking openly about
exactly,
bipolar
exactly.
disorder, which again, I commend you. It takes a lot of courage to talk about this topic. When did you first realize that sharing your story publicly might help others?
Mm. Well, it was through another manic depressive episode that I that had me hospitalized. And I was at the time working on my PhD in education studies. And I remember in my manic episode, I'm not sure if you know mania and depression and like the psychosis that kind of comes with it. But I remember kind of like my internal dialogue speaking through me and saying, like, you want to solve so many issues in education. It's such a broken system that you can't fix it yourself. You need to write your story. You need to tell your story. And so that's kind of where I started with All the Pills That I Swallow, my memoir. And then after that, I said, okay, how can I make my message bigger? And so I dared to do the TEDx talk and made it about, kind of like a coming out with my bipolar disease, to let people know that you can still be high functioning. You can look normal and have this disease, but it doesn't stop you from being an excellent contributor to society.
And if you guys haven't checked it out, you guys definitely need to tune into her TED talk. It is amazing. And we're going to
Thank you.
talk about that a little bit later in today's episode. But I want to talk about fears. Did you experience any fears or hesitations about speaking openly about bipolar disorder?
I think it comes with the stigma that society has. about bipolar disorder or any serious mental health issues. It was this, and I hid it for a very long time. Like only personal people and people that I trusted knew that I was bipolar because I was in high performance stakes kind of environments, corporate environments, education environments, academia. And so that's not a thing that people speak about nor respect and could take away your credibility. And so I was extremely, extremely scared and fearful that it would discredit everything that I had worked for because I have many accolades. I have a life that I built. And it was with the terms that I was high functioning and productive and had it all together when internally I really didn't. And so for me, it was just that kind of like, I call it like the coming out. It's difficult to do it, but at the same time, it's like, what's the worst thing that can happen, right? I've already had the worst things that can happen to me already happen. And so if it's backlash, it's backlash. If it's judgment, it's judgment. But eventually, I think my message will get to the right people that need to hear it.
And I identify with that so much because as a person who actually attempted suicide at one point in her life, I was very fearful about telling my story. I felt people would judge me, people would
Right.
want to lock me up in a mental health facility. I didn't know what
Exactly.
from it. I actually thought my daughter was going to get taken away from me. So
Hmm.
it does. You do have those fears about speaking about it. And now when I'm in rooms with people and we're talking mental health, I share my story and I feel empowered.
Exactly.
So we've talked about mental illness and there are several stigmas that surrounds the mental health field. In your experience, what are some of the biggest misunderstandings people have about bipolar disorder?
I think I'm like this, it's almost like the face of like the real bipolar. It's like the people believe, and when they meet me and they're just like, there's no way that you're bipolar. And it's like, but why would you think that? I'm high functioning because I'm intelligent, because I can carry myself in a certain way. Those people exist all over the place. You just don't know, right, that they are bipolar and that they're hiding that stigma because they don't want your judgment, right? And so for me, it's that like just this aspect of people just have this strong opinions or like interpretations of what bipolar is. And they also have misconceptions that bipolar is changing your mind a lot, or like having a good day and having a bad day, or like the weather. Oh, it's just bipolar. They say it so easily, it rolls off the tongue. But I'm like, you don't understand, right? Like, if you've ever experienced the highest euphoric high you could ever get without any drugs or anything, and then you could go like the same height of euphoria, you do the lowest that you could ever be in your whole entire life. And you have to go through that, and your mind turns against you, and everything that you thought was real wasn't. Then you might have like a good assumption of what bipolar is. But I don't think anybody really gets it.
And before I started my journey into this field, I was one of those people that thought it was about mood swings and
Right.
it would just be a up and down type of a thing. But she's right. It's more to it. It's just not just saying, oh, they change their mood changes with the weather type of thing.
Right.
Speaking of this, how has living with bipolar disorder shaped your creativity, your perspective, and your leadership in ways people might not expect?
Yeah. Well, when you go through such roller coasters of emotion in personal life, it's hard not to be empathetic, sympathetic, and just emotionally attached to people and their experiences, right? Because you understand kind of that depth that comes with life and the sorrows and the deepness of like certain feelings. And so for me, it shaped the way that I view people and the life experience. And it has really, you would think that it made me bitter or some kind of like a skeptic about life. But in actuality, I see just the beauty in the experience of life, that I get to experience such a euphoric high that I don't think anybody can, and be access to this kind of different realm by also trudging through the deepness and the silent, like festering hatred and just the disgust, the deep, nasty parts of life, and be able to trudge through both. and come out still as an advocate, still wanting to make a change, and like nothing can knock me down. And so that's what I bring to the table. I think everybody has the ability to try to get out of it. And as long as they see that everything is temporary, I think that's the key to survival.
Absolutely. And if you know me, you know I am a true advocate, fan, whatever you want to call it, lived experience turned professionals. I think that if more lived experience would have that courage to step out into the field, we could break a lot of those stigmas.
Exactly.
And speaking of which, you've taken your pain and your diagnosis and turned it truly into a purpose, which you just mentioned a few minutes ago about your TEDx talk. So let's
Mhm.
talk about that for a minute. What was the central message you hope people would take away after hearing your story during that talk?
I think really my talk is about a breakdown that happened and how I had to redefine success from accolades and rising up in a corporate world to the daily things that I do that keeps me together. Right. And it's just those success for me turned into like taking my medicine, taking self care, making sure I understand who I am and every single day moving forward. Right. Those are the moments that make you successful, not always the shiny titles or accolades.
And if you guys ever wanted to hear a lived experience of a person that is living with bipolar disorder, please go over and hear Gabriela's TEDx talk. Please let everybody know where they can find the TEDx talk.
Sure, you could type my name in, Gabriela D. Ayala, and it is When the Mind Breaks, Choosing to Stay. That's the title of the talk.
Absolutely. And you guys run, don't walk. Now, I want to ask, was there a moment where you realized you were beginning to redefine your identity?
I think it all started after that second manic episode where it was like keeping this inside. And I was in a PhD program at the time. The conformity that comes with academia, I felt like I was not living my true self, that I was just hiding who I was because I wanted the credentials and the platform and the title that said, I belong here, right? I learned that I don't need any more accolades, that my lived experience is a PhD in itself, and that what I have to say and do doesn't necessarily need those accolades, just need a true, honest voice.
Oh, I love that. My lived experience doesn't need a PhD, it's a PhD in itself. And that right there just blew my mind. I absolutely love that. So I'm just going to move on to our next question, which
Yeah.
we're going to talk about your book. The title, it really does mean a lot, and it's going to catch y'all by surprise. So
Yeah.
the book is entitled All the Pills I Swallow. What originally inspired this title, and what does it represent about your personal journey?
Here's the book. It's All the Pills I Swallow. You can find it on Amazon. And All the Pills I Swallow, the title stood out to me because I at first had a different title and I thought this just doesn't, a lot of other people had it. It was like through the muck, right? Going through the muck. And that was inspired by Their Eyes Were Watching God, right? And so she talked about the muck and how you have to trudge through it. It's kind of like this depressive kind of state. And so I thought that was a great title. And then all of a sudden I was just kind of like, what is it that I have to take and do every day to get through, right? To get through these moments. And I had to take a lot of medicine, right? I had to take a lot of pills, but also it's all the things that I had to digest throughout my life, the pills that I had, the hard pills I had to swallow to realize and come to this place where it's like all of those had meaning, even if they were, you thought at the time they were the most horrible thing that could have happened to you. It always turns out to be almost the best thing that could happen to you.
And again, thank you for just being so open and honest with our audience about your treatment and your book. Again, it explores that. So, what conversations do you hope this book opens that people usually avoid?
I think I've gotten some reviews that it's just so raw and honest, right? There's no pretending, there's no cutting it. And it's the reality of what mania feels like and what depression feels like. And then the undiagnosed aspect of like self diagnosing yourself with drugs, alcohol, sex, bad behavior, just trying to figure out kind of what is going on within you and escaping whatever darkness that I had. And so it's like that, and it's about love and it's about friendship and it's about this just honest kind of journey of what it's like to be first generation, trying to get accolades and anything to prove their self-worth when all of a sudden, like, really it's within you. You're the one that has the self-worth. You're the one that puts value on it. Nobody else can do that for you.
Now, again, your journey, it literally is the definition of resilience and
Yeah.
just steady keep going no matter what, you guys. Let's talk about what are some of the small and visible decisions that helped you survive in those difficult moments.
Gosh, I have to say my husband, my family really had a lot to do with it. But as much as they have a lot to do with it, I don't know where that light comes from on the inside that just like refuses to die. And there's so many times that it's been close to it. And I don't know. I don't know if it's God, spirituality, or just something inside me that refuses to put that light out. But somehow I grasp to that. I just have a deep understanding that, like, this is temporary. My moods will go up and down and then they will finally kind of like relax and be at this normal state. And if you can remember that, that's where you're going to come out triumphant. But the thing is, the disease price, it's the hardest to stifle that, right? It will trick you into thinking that this is permanent. And that's what's so dangerous about the disease is that it literally tricks you into thinking this is it, or you're Jesus, you're a savior, or like you belong in hell. It'll trick you. And so you have to be strong enough to say, my mind, unfortunately, right now, it's not working for me, it's working against me. And I have to keep that spirit kind of alive and going.
Absolutely. And, it takes me back to what the kids are saying these days is not on you, it's in you. And, that goes
Mhm.
back to that light. That's why it just won't die because it's literally in you, it's not on you. And, we
That's
do,
right.
we love our family and we love our kids, we love our spouses, but that inner strength is old superpower.
Exactly. It really is. And I don't know where it comes from. I wish everybody had it. There's some sad stories where people just lose it and you gotta find it inside of you to try to hold on.
Absolutely. Now, I want to get some advice from you for my audience out there, whether if they're an educator or an employer, what changes would you like to see in how we support people with living with mental health challenges?
Absolutely. I have just started Keep Brilliant, which is my initiative to try to help businesses and organizations and universities and high schools to identify, these students and employees, and even their head CEOs, right? And try to find a way to identify them, support them, and be that space where brilliance can be captured, right? Instead of being chased away.
Oh, and we're going to make sure we get all that information at the end of today's episode. Now, we've come to our last question, and I'll give you a second to think about this, Gabriella.
Sure.
And when we think back to your journey, your work, what do you hope that your journey inspires others to do?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple aspects to it. I want to stop stigmas, right? I want those masks to come down. I want a place that feels safe enough for their masks to be able to come down so they don't have to pretend and spend 60% of their life hiding who they are and 40% of their lives really being that productive, important individual that they know they are. If we can shed the mask and create safe spaces for everybody in business, in college, in high schools, and everywhere, you are going to get fantastic people that are capable of the things that you really enjoy, the creativity, the productivity, et cetera. Those are the things that they're good at. And so if we don't like give them space to be that, and we always constantly have stigmas and there's worry and fear, you're never going to get 100% of your best employees and your best students.
And I just tell a quick little story real quick. I remember being a manager and everybody was picking on, people that clearly was diagnosed with disabilities. And
Mhm.
one of the things I did was try to find their strengths. And
Exactly.
one of the things was when we would have rushes, I would put them on their strongest spots and they would look like all stars just like everybody.
Exactly.
So that's how you break stigmas. You literally
Yep.
find out the places where they may feel left out and you create that space for them to actually come in, feel confident, and feel like an all-star.
Absolutely. And that's the key. And Jonte, I hope that a lot of more people do that. And that's what my speaking engagements are about. That's what my workshops are about. And that's what my consulting is about creating those spaces that time for your high performance workers who are dealing with usually it's comorbid, right? Like if you're extremely high performing, you usually have some kind of a mental health illness. And so we need to really like accommodate that so that they can provide their best.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sadly, you guys, our time it has run out. But before we go, you guys, we want to make sure that we get all of Gabrielle information. So please let us know where we can get the book, where we can hear the TED talk again, and where we can sign up for all services.
Sure. So the TEDx talk is When the Mind Breaks, Choosing to Stay. You can look that up on the TEDx website. We also have All the Pills I Swallow, which you can find on Amazon by Gabriela D. Ayala. And then for my services with Keep Brilliant, I will be on LinkedIn, which is Gabriela D. Ayala, 1L for Gabriela. And you can find all of my keynotes and services over there. So if you want to get in contact with me, if you're a high performing individual who would like to have a discussion, I'm also creating a new book. And so I would love to get in contact with you. It's book at GabrielaDAyalaSpeak.com. That's my email, and that'll be confidential. If you would love to have that discussion, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. And we will be leaving all that information down in the description box below. Thanks again, author, keynote speaker, and lifelong educator, Gabriela D. Ayala, for coming on and offering her personal insights. And if today's message resonated, be sure to leave us some comments down in the comment section. Also, if you like stories such as these, be sure to subscribe so you never miss whenever we upload. Until we meet next time, keep your healing intentional, your boundaries solid, and your peace protected.